Hello and welcome to this webcast on growing green lending in your market with GCPF's exclusive toolkit. This webinar is hosted by the Global Climate Partnership Fund, which I will refer to as GCPF from now on. GCPF is an innovative public-private partnership which uses public funding to leverage private capital in order to mitigate climate change and drive sustainable growth in developing and emerging markets. GCPF mainly invests through local financial institutions, but also directly. GCPF finances projects targeting small and medium-sized businesses and private households, specifically energy efficiency projects that reduce projected greenhouse gas emissions by at least 20%, and renewable energy generation projects. Today we are with Shaheen Tejani. She is our speaker today for this webinar, and she is a capacity building consultant with experience in SME entrepreneurship, financial inclusion, learning and development systems, communications, and strategic planning. For the last decade, she has focused on capacity building for poverty alleviation, working to increase access to financial services across Africa, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East through innovative training academies, communications, and learning programs. She has also developed communications toolkits for green lending and financial inclusion. Her programs and curriculum have served over 10,000 staff in 20 countries. So a little bit of housekeeping before she begins. There are handouts you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen, which you can download right now, or you can wait until the end. She will discuss them more during the presentation. Just so you know, everyone is muted. So if you have any questions, you can just type them into the chat function on the side of your screen, and we will get to your questions when we can during one of the designated Q&A sessions. Also, just so you know, Shaheen will turn on her webcam here in a minute, so you get to meet her. But if you have low bandwidth or something, you can always turn your webcam off. You go to the right and click on webcams, and click on the webcams again to the right, and below that, you can hide all the webcams. With that, I will pass over to Shaheen.
Okay, so I hope that you can all see me and hear me. My name is Shaheen Tejani, and it's my pleasure to do this webinar for you. As Stacy indicated, I've been working in microfinance, SME banking, commercial banking in developing economies as well as emerging economies. And one of the things that I've been doing over the last 20 years is trying to help financial institutions engage and train their staff. I'm really sad to say, unfortunately, the majority of the training is not very engaging. And so as part of that exercise, I've developed certain learning approaches, activity-based learning approaches. And this is what brought me to GCPF to come and develop a green lending toolkit. Now, one of the problems that GCPF told me that the partner financial institutions have is, how do you go and communicate about green technologies, about the opportunity, and also about how to engage your staff and help them sell green lending? This is a difficult area because green lending is seen as a new area for the banks. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the toolkit that we created. Now my slides aren't moving. Are they moving for you, Stacy? No. Okay. Click in the middle again. Okay. Yes, here we go. There we go. It's the user at the end of the button, which is me. Okay, so I decided to first go and talk to the users. So not only did I speak to GCPF financial institutions from Sri Lanka to Costa Rica to Nicaragua, I spoke to a lot of the experts. I went to visit these institutions and I spoke to the CEO and management. I spoke to the operations staff, the branch managers, and the frontline sales staff. And I said, what do you need to sell green lending? What do you need to build up your portfolio? And the answer was a variety of things. Different people need different information in different ways at different times as well, because the information you need at the beginning of your process is different from when you're expanding your green lending program. So this was the basis of the needs analysis for the Green Lending Toolkit. The toolkit has a user guide, which you can download right now or at any time. It's available on our partner community. It's also available as a handout on this webinar. It is a great guide. It gives you an outline of each of the tools, and it gives you an idea of what the tool has in it and how do you use it. So it's a good summary document for you to have. I'll mention that now, but I'm going to go through this with you. So what you're looking at now is the toolkit. It's these 16 pieces of information, guidelines, templates, training, and all of these are divided into 4 categories. So there are guides and sales training for business development. There are training workshops and engagement workshops in the second column. The third column you'll see is branding and marketing, because as you start marketing your green lending, you need to have strategies that will help you grow that portfolio, to reach out to new segments, to new markets. And you also need to know what those markets are. So for example, the GL marketing and segmentation guide in the third column is a how-to on how to identify those markets. And then there's the technology. The technology seems to scare people. We don't know why. And unfortunately, what happens is that a lot of financial institutions try to overtrain, I call it, on technology. So for example, when I talk to financial institutions about their training, they always say to me, we have lots and lots of training. We have many courses. Here's one with 180 slides that tells you everything about solar rooftop. And I always say to them, that's too much information. The salesperson doesn't need to know all of this. Ask yourself, what is it that the salesperson having a conversation with, let's say, a retail customer about rooftop solar on their roof needs to know? They don't need to know everything. I call this the encyclopedia method. Unfortunately, in a lot of training, we try and take all 26 volumes. I don't know if some of you are old enough, 26 volumes of those encyclopedias, and we throw them at people. And they don't know then what is useful. So the art of good learning and development is to pick the right information for the right person at the right time. And I've tried to do that with this guide. So as I go through it, I'm going to show you examples so you can judge whether it's been designed in the right way. I'm going to move on. Before I do, you can see I've got circles around 3 of the tools. Today, I'm going to do some deep dives into the strategy workshop, which I think is very important at the beginning. It's seminal as you grow your green lending portfolio. So it's very important to have a good strategy and plan. The second is the portfolio workshop. Now, that is specifically for frontline salespeople. How do you build your GL portfolio for a salesperson? So the first one is for management, the second one is for frontline staff, and the champions training is a capacity building workshop. It allows you to train green champions that you can have in all your branches, all your departments, and they're responsible for using the toolkit, marketing, engaging, and training. But they themselves need training. So it's a TOT, it's a training of trainers. Okay. Now, the toolkit, as I said, is 16 tools. What do you need first? And so if you download the user guide, you'll see that we explained in the user guide the kinds of tools you need at the beginning. So if you look at the diagram on the right at the bottom, it says how to get started with green lending. So at the beginning, what do you need? You need a plan, you need strategy, you might need to have a strategic planning workshop if your strategy needs to align people and resources and go through some thinking. You need to look at your markets. In each country, in each region, the markets are different. There are different issues driving the market. What segments of the market are you going to go after? What segments in your portfolio are you going to go after? So that's the marketing and segmentation guide. Of course, you're going to develop products. And we've tried to give you some wisdom, and this wisdom comes from you, the different partner financial institutions, on how to develop good green lending products, how to get a pre-approved products list going, and then, of course, creating capacity. One person is not going to be able to go out there and engage and train everyone. So you're going to need champions, and the champions training also comes early. Then as you go up the scale, you can see that there are tools for expanding your portfolio, things like sales training, case studies, so you can go after new sectors. The 101 info session is like an exciting engagement session that you can do for all your staff, the portfolio workshop to help loan officers. And again, at the top, there are then other tools which allow you to build an ecosystem, go out there and market, and really expand your influence. So each of these tools is designed to stand alone, but also to be used at different points of your development, okay? So the first thing I am going to talk about is this capacity building, because I use a different learning approach. As I said earlier, one of the things that I find is that training is poor. It's passive. It's PowerPoint presentations, and it's not engaging and it's not fun. And I remember when I went to Sri Lanka and met with Pan Asia Bank, the head of business said to me, "My salespeople have 30 products to sell. How am I going to get them to pay attention to green lending? You know, this is like number 31. What are we going to do?" So it was very important to make sure that the training is exciting, the training is fun, the training is active, and allows people to think. So this Champions Workshop does two things. The first thing that it does is it gives your staff the capacity to do activity-based training. Now, I love this cartoon because it's so familiar to all of us. We've all sat in a presentation with 150 slides with someone with their back turned to us reading the slides. And unfortunately, this is the status of a lot of training that I still see today in financial institutions. We do technical training, we have a lot of compliance issues, and so we kill people by PowerPoint on a regular basis. Of course, it's all Microsoft's fault. They decided to invent PowerPoint. But what you may not know is that PowerPoint was invented as a presentation tool, presenting data. And that's how people used it in the first couple of years. And then some very smart people from the training and learning department decided that this was fantastic, that we have a lot of information that we would like our staff to learn. And what we will do is we will present it to them. And they made the error of equating the presentation of information with learning. Now, since the 1960s, if you see my cone of learning, this little pyramid, we've known since the 60s that people absorb less than 5% of lecture, especially PowerPoint presentations. If they read it themselves, which would be a better strategy, send it to them, let them read it, they'll actually absorb more, twice as much, 10%. If there are nice pictures, cool diagrams, like you see my pyramid here, tonight when you go to bed, you will still remember my pyramid, I guarantee it, because it's colorful and it's a diagram and that's how your brain thinks, is 20%. And so as you go down the pyramid, you'll see that the more you engage people, the more that people discuss, the more that people get their hands on things, the more that they practice doing exercises, the more that they tell others what they think and what they've learned, the more they absorb. And we know this, we've known this for a long time, but yet we don't use it in learning and development. And so my learning approach, which I've developed from the last 10 years of working with about 40 financial institutions, is I had to give it a cool name. So I call it LEAP, and it's supposed to look like a frog. So bear with me, that is a frog. And so the core of the frog is one, put the learner in charge. Figure out what is it that that person needs to do and know at this point in time. It doesn't matter what you want to tell them. Don't throw the encyclopedia at them. Find out what is it that they need to do so that they're in charge. They drive the agenda. You don't create the agenda. Their needs create the agenda. So that's the first exercise. And this is what I did when I did my needs analysis for the toolkit. The second thing is allow them to discover knowledge. Let them find it. Let them read case studies. Let them do activities where they discover knowledge. They decide that, hey, there's a lot of opportunities in my portfolio. These are the segments that need energy efficiency and renewable energy. They should discover the knowledge. This means you need to keep experts out of the room. Unfortunately, what we do is we sometimes put experts in the room and let them tell learners what to do. This doesn't work very well. So keep learners active, let them discover knowledge. The third, you can see the third leg of my frog is mental agility. And that means giving people uh, fun, exciting, tough things to do. Give them case studies, give them projects, give them assignments so that they go and they use the information that they've discovered and that they practice it. If you do these four things, people will leave the room transformed. They will either be able to do something because they've already just done it for you, they've shown what they can do, and it will change their behavior. So, this is my learning approach. I'll stop evangelizing about it, but you will see it when you see the training materials. And so, how do I create these champions for you? So, the first thing I do is I let them know that the toolkit has these different training workshops. The toolkit has all these other resources. And I try and convince them, it takes me the first morning to convince them that learner centric thinking is better. Focus on the learner, focus on what they need, when they need it, and they will be more engaged. I have to help them avoid passive training, which is your bad habits. Passive training is lecturing, um, turning your back to people, reading PowerPoint slides, and just throwing the encyclopedia at people. That's all passive. It's a no-no. They cannot do that anymore. So they have to get creative. They have to come up with creative activities, and I actually force them to do that, right? Learning by doing. They learn by doing, by creating active experiences in the classroom. And then I teach them how to facilitate activity-based learning so that when they see the workshop, they get it. They look at the workshop activity and they say, okay, this is what this activity is trying to do. I have to keep quiet. I have to let the learner discover knowledge and have some fun. And if you go through this, you will then have champions. They know the toolkit, they know how to deliver the workshops, and they're fantastic facilitators. So that's the GL workshop. And at the end of the day, what you really want to do is make sure that the learner is in charge. You are focusing on what that person needs to do, what that person needs to know, and at what point in time. Okay. And and if you go through this workshop yourself, you will also improve your own presentation skills. So I recommend it highly to everyone. Now that you know how to be a green champion and you know about activity-based learning, you can understand the strategy workshop. So again, I spoke with many financial institutions and many of them had strategies. They had brought in an expert and a consultant and they had this 150-page book, which was their strategy. And it had all the energy issues in their market, all their segments. It had 50 pages in the annex, which detailed all the different technologies available, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, no one ever picked up that strategy workshop and executed it. And so I decided to take a different approach, which is who executes strategy? That's your leadership, your management, all the way from CEO to your department heads, your head of business, your credit people, your marketing people, your product people, your communications people, all these human beings, if they were able to work together in alignment, they would execute your strategy. So that's what the strategy workshop does. It gets all these human beings in one room together and takes them on a learning journey. So it's a 2-day workshop. They sit together, and the first thing that happens is that the GL team and maybe the marketing people take a little bit out of that giant document that they have, and they present the energy market, the energy opportunities, and the segments, the key segments and technologies in your market. So everybody's on the same page, from communications to marketing to product to branch managers. They're all there, and they now all know what is the opportunity. Then they work together and they work in different groups and they try and identify the key sectors and customers they want to go after. So they're actually pulling apart this information now and they're working in groups and they're saying, we think we should go after transportation. We think we should go after commercial buildings. And why? They have to argue with each other. They have to come up with a presentation, and each of them presents. And then the group as a whole decides, okay, what are our key customers, right? Again, they're aligned. They've now agreed. Now, what will we do with it? So again, they work together. They do a SWOT analysis based on where the institution is. They create a vision and set goals for the green lending strategy. Again, everyone is part of this discussion. It's a lot of activity. They work in groups. They set the goals. They argue about it, and they come to a firm set of goals for let's say, the next 24 months. Depending on the institution, they may or may not have a long timeline, or they may have a short timeline. So again, they're aligned. Then they look at strategies and success factors. It's great to have a goal, but there's many different ways to get to that goal. So again, there's an activity that they have to do that's specific to success factors and strategies. At the end of it, at the end of day 2, so sorry, I forgot to tell you, 1, 2, and 3, the market, the identification of the target market, and the vision and goals are on the first day. They then go sleep on it. They come back in the morning of day 2, and they confirm the vision and goals. And then they look at strategies. By the afternoon of the second day, they've now started with a plan. They start putting things in a timeline. What are the resources we're going to need, and who is going to do what? They have to put up their hands and say, okay, I'm going to work on products. Okay, I'm going to work on communications. I'm going to work on training. So you actually have a room full of people now committed and aligned, and everybody knows what you're going to do. That's when a strategy becomes real. So if you look at my photograph from Pro America, Costa Rica, we had a fantastic training space, by the way. We had a technical university that was just starting, where all the classrooms are fully covered with whiteboards. All the walls are whiteboards. So you can write all over the walls. It was fantastic because every conversation that we had was up on the walls. We could see it, we could erase it, we could revise it, we could discuss it. But you don't have to have Texas Technical University like Pro America. You can just use a regular room and use the business canvas model. So I've used this often. You make sure that you get a room where you can stick things on the wall, and you use flip charts. So there would be one flip chart with your vision and mission, another one that identifies your goals, another one that has your client segments, et cetera, et cetera. And what you do is you use sticky notes, or post-it notes, we call them, so that you can move things, delete things, add things, so that it becomes a living discussion over those 2 days. And so the first day you do the top 3, on the second day you do the bottom 3. By the end of day 2, you have a plan, a timeline, and milestones. Sometimes you even have a budget, depending on how good people are at estimating costs. So there's your strategy workshop. All your key people, your key leadership, your management in a room together. They don't come out till they have this plan. And they've had all the arguments they need to have, so they're aligned. It's a real bonus. So once you have this fantastic strategy, they start implementing. And congratulations to Pro America, they've already started with implementing their plan and their milestones. I think they took about a month to clarify and write the strategy, and now they're executing that strategy. The second workshop I'm going to talk about is the portfolio workshop. Now, remember, as I said, the strategy workshop is for the top layer, for the leadership and management to be clear about what are we going to do, how are we going to grow green lending, and what are our plans. This one really came out of the wisdom of Pan Asia Bank CEO in Colombo. He said to me, "What do you mean by green lending? There's no such thing as green lending. There's just good business." He said, "I don't care whether it's green or blue or yellow, but if one of my customers can benefit from saving energy, and Sri Lanka imports its crude oil. So you can imagine the cost of energy is significant. It's a driver of business performance. And so if my clients can save money, if they can put in renewables and have more sustainable energy in the future, it's just good business. I don't need to paint it green. And I already have those clients in my existing portfolio. So this was really great because one of the challenges that bank was having is how to convince these loan officers who have 30 products to sell something new. So what they said is, There's nothing new. Green finance is good finance. Go to your existing portfolio and pull out customers. So this workshop is for loan officers and salespeople. At the front line, they already have a portfolio, they have a target, they're stressed, trying to sell all these products, and you're going to help them find new loans from the existing portfolio. So they don't have to do extra work. In fact, you're going to help them with their target. So how does the learning journey work? It's just 1 day workshop. They start by first becoming a little bit engaged with what is the benefit, what's the value proposition for green lending. In the past, people used to sell, when it started, green lending, as let's save the planet, or here's this cool new technology. Let's try and install this new scary technology into our manufacturing plants. It wasn't, or it was sold as cheap finance, because initially there were some lines of credit to motivate green lending that were at cheaper levels. That no longer works, and that no longer is true now, because green lending has become mainstream. You have to sell it as a true value proposition for your clients. You're going to help them improve their businesses. You're going to reduce their energy costs. You're going to reduce their energy needs. You're going to improve performance. So how do you help salespeople see the value proposition? That's step one. Once they're convinced, they can explore some of the technologies, but not in a scary way. They're going to explore them and look at how easy it is to identify sectors that can benefit. So that's the second exercise they do. All of this is activity-based, no lecture. They're working in groups, they're identifying sectors of opportunity. Third, they'll then look at those industry sectors and case studies and look at how that delivers value to the customer. And after lunch, they come back with their portfolio and they give you a list of prospects from their existing portfolio. Now that I know there's value add and benefit for my clients, now that I'm familiar with the technologies and products we have, here's my list of prospects from my existing portfolio. I don't have to find new customers. Of course, once they go through this process, it's easy for them to find new customers, but the immediate benefit of this is they feel extremely motivated because they have new customers in their existing portfolio. And so they come up with a list. And in Pan Asia Bank, for example, where we did this workshop, they were able to identify 300 customers. This is 20 loan officers with their portfolio. All of them identified between 20 to 50 new customers. So they left the room with 300 new loans, and they thought, wow, this is easy. And that's what this portfolio workshop does. So they start with the portfolio. You can't enter the room unless you bring your portfolio with you. So they're told to bring it. And as I said, step one, where are the opportunities? One of the things that scare them is that this is something new, so I'm going to have to find new customers. Where's the opportunities? Who wants green technologies? That's not the question. The question is everybody wants to save energy. So they look at, if you look at my second slide, you'll see in slide 20, there's a matrix there of 4 sectors. And they have to talk about those 4 sectors and identify what are the energy issues in those sectors? What are the energy costs? And of course, energy keeps growing. If you were to do this workshop, you would of course customize it to the kinds of sectors that you deal with. So remember, when you get all of this training and you have your champions, you can customize a lot of this training to fit your portfolio. So for them, it was manufacturing, property development, banking, and agriculture. Then the second step was now look at the technologies. So we gave them the GL Technologies booklet, which many of you might have seen. It's fantastic. It's a really simple booklet, explains the major technologies and the kinds of benefits that clients can get. So they had to comb through it, no PowerPoint presentations. They have to comb through it. They have to look at those technologies. They have to look at those benefits and say, aha, these are the sectors that can benefit from this. So who can benefit from biomass? They have to think about it. Who can benefit from solar rooftop? They have to think about it. They have to tell you. So this is the learner being active. Once they've done that, they now see that there's opportunities and they know how to match opportunity to sectors. They go to their portfolio and they target. So now they go to their portfolio, they pull it out, and first we get them to do this little energy matrix activity. So again, this is from India. from Bangladesh. So the bank in Bangladesh started to look at their segments of their portfolio, and they said, we have lots of textile businesses, we have wood processing, and we have bakeries. Which of these customer segments use a lot of electricity, and where do they use it, and where do they use fuel? Because anywhere that you're using lots of electricity, you're burning costs, right? These are costs that are going to keep going up, costs that are going to keep reducing your profits and performance. So this is a big issue for your customers. So they went through that. Then they looked at fuel. All these industries look at fuel. They had to do this matrix for all of the segments in their portfolio. Then when they were able to identify the ones where they thought there was the most pain for the customer, they started to look and identify technologies that could reduce that electricity cost or reduce that fuel cost. And if you can do that, if you can reduce pain for your customers, reduce their costs and make them more profitable, you don't need to force them to look at energy efficiency or renewable energy. They will have to look at it. So then they look at their portfolio. They go through the different segments in their portfolio, the different types of clients, and they identify them. And as I said, for some of the banks, each salesperson was able to identify between 20 to 40. So depending on the size of their portfolio, the kinds of energy use, this is a great exercise. Even if they walk out with 4 new clients, it's still new clients from their existing portfolio who they already know. And it becomes a real motivator for them. So they present that, and by presenting it to each other, they again share the knowledge that they've created. So that's the portfolio workshop. So we did want to poll you a little bit about the toolkit, about the workshops. So Stacy's going to poll you, but this is also a time where we could stop and take questions from you. I'm sorry, I was supposed to stop after the strategy workshop, but you can ask questions about the toolkit, you can ask questions about the strategy workshop, and you can also ask questions about how to use the portfolio workshop. So you should see a poll come on your screen. Stacy, there we go. The poll is open. So we want to know whether you would use the toolkit or any of the workshops. And while we're waiting for the poll, I hope you can see that. What I'd like to do also is to, also let you know that, the champions training, the strategy workshop, if you are just starting out, you feel you don't have the staff ready to do it, GCPF technical assistance can help you and provide you with consultants who can come and run those workshops for you. But all of the material is designed in such a way that you should be able to run them yourself. The materials themselves. There is a learner workbook, which gives you all of the materials for the learners, which you simply print out and distribute. And there's a training handbook, a training manual, which goes through the workshop, tells you what to do, what to say, and how to behave at each section of the workshop. So it is designed as a curriculum toolkit that you can take away and deliver. So yes, please, if you can, that would be great. Let me see. Can I see it? Okay. I don't think I can see it, but you can just tell me. Ah,
For would you like to use this workshop in your institution? We've got 40% said yes, and 60% said maybe, and no one said no.
okay, that's good. I've done a sales job.
Would your institution use the toolkit? 100% said maybe.
Okay, so questions. This is your chance to ask questions. I've put it back on the screen with the 16 tools. This is your toolkit. If you have questions about any of the tools, remember the user guide is also there for you to look at each one of them. Or if you have a task or a strategy that you need to go after. We've got a question.
Yes, we have a question here from Andreas, who answered the polls twice, maybe. If the loan officers go through the existing portfolio, then they believe this loan they can disperse under existing loan products. So why is green lending required? Can you please suggest a good response for this question?
Yeah, this is a very good question because there are two ways of thinking about it. Some of the financial institutions are saying we don't need this new green product. It's just another form of financing. And therefore, the loan officers look at the existing portfolio and they're financing something that just happens to be green, right? So some of the banks have actually gone down that path. Others have said, yes, but with certain new technologies that are not validated, that are not well known, there is a technical risk for the financing, and that we need to do a technical assessment and make sure that the savings, the CO2 emissions that we need to report on, the reduction in those are valid. So we want to wrap it in this wrapper, which we call green loans. And green loans, by having a green loan, by branding it as a green loan, there's also a lot of marketing benefit. It allows you to market something new, market something different, to show people that we used to finance cars, but now we have green loans which finance electric cars. So, it's your choice. It depends on your marketing strategy and where you think you can get the most attention. And as I said, financial institutions have gone in both directions. Some felt it was too complicated and that, yes, they would have this little technical assessment requirement for large installations or large financing of a green finance project, but they wouldn't call it green. While others feel that there's a great branding and marketing opportunity by calling it green. Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, financing is financing. And yet we have all kinds of products. And we package them as products because it allows us to then target a specific market. And so we have green tractor loans. It's still just a loan for a vehicle, but it's now for a green tractor. And that allows the bank in India to then market those loans to farmers because they wake up when they hear the word green tractor loans. So it's really up to you, Andres. And again, it depends on where your marketing benefit is and how much you want to brand yourself as a green bank. One of the tools in the toolkit is the Going Green Guide. Now, that has nothing to do with green lending, but a lot of the banks find that they want to lead by example. They want clients to think about green technologies, and so they themselves want the bank to become green. So the Going Green Guide gives you advice on how to become green yourself. And again, it's really a way to get marketing advantage. Does that answer your question, I hope?
We have another question. This is from Pablo. He's asking, should financial regulators provide green lending policies so financial institutions would adapt and apply green lending more effectively?
Yes, and in fact, in some of the countries, financial regulators are doing it. It doesn't always come from the banking regulator. It sometimes comes from the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Sustainability. So in Sri Lanka, for example, the government decided that that there would have to be uh, emission controls and that there would be a tax benefit to a green loan for an electric car or even a hybrid. So the banks started to all create hybrid loans and green car loans. But this is the Ministry of Transport working with the financial regulator to say, how are we going to motivate people to move away from those smelly diesel tuk-tuks and those cars which are polluting our environment? So it can come from anywhere in the government. And usually governments have working groups that involve several of the ministries, but providing the financial services and the financing for climate change is a big issue for all governments. And they're all trying to figure out, how do we incentivize people to go green or to go renewable? Well, we're going to have to make sure the financing is there. So inevitably, the banking regulator gets involved. But sometimes it's the banks who have to take the lead. And in the case of Sri Lanka, for example, Pan Asia Bank worked on the committee that the financial regulator and the Ministry of Transport had. So they actually worked on that committee and said, you make these regulations, we will provide the financing. And this is the kind of financing and tax benefit that could incentivize people to switch to these green cars. So it's still a mix, and that's what makes this exciting, is that you can start things, or you can work with the government and other regulators so that regulations will come down. But the inevitability is that all the governments of I guess all of the countries in the world now are saying, what rules do we need to have so that we can ensure that climate change doesn't impact us in the future? So this conversation is happening. You probably need to go and find out where it's happening in your ministries and in your government.
And then Andres makes the comment that Europe does a lot in this respect regarding regulations, and sent a link to that. Do you want to talk about emerging markets and what's going on?
Well, most of the banks I've been working with are in the emerging markets, and they always point to Europe, and they say, in Europe you have these approved products, right, that are Energy Star certified or green certified. So we don't even have to worry about technology and certifying technologies. In the emerging economies, it's a little bit slower. Because what happens is that there are fewer bodies that certify things, that say, this is green. And so the definition of green is sometimes unknown and makes it a little bit more difficult. But the countries that are doing really well, like for example, Costa Rica is doing really well in terms of sustainability and green energy, because the government is behind it and they are creating certification bodies. Where you don't have anything like that, you may be doing a pilot. You may be doing a technical assessment for an industry, and then working with that industry to have some sort of standard. So one of the things that the toolkit does is it suggests that you look at starting to create an ecosystem. So if you look at the branding and marketing section, you'll see there's a little guide called the GL Ecosystem Guide. I saw a fantastic ecosystem developed by Pro America in Nicaragua. And what they did is they started to have quarterly meetings with industry experts, associations, so Manufacturers Association, Automobile Association, Transport Association, Utilities Association. They would have these meetings. They would have technology experts come and present. They would invite the government. They would invite their clients. And by having these little ecosystems develop, people would share information and say, okay, we should certify this as a great solution to reduce energy. And the bank will say, and we are very happy to finance it, right? So they would create this little ecosystem outside the bank. And again, this is what we call civil society organizations. Some countries have them that are concerned about the environment, concerned about climate change, concerned about pollution. They're the perfect organizations to partner with and say, let's talk about this, let's learn, let's bring in associations. And when you get chambers of commerce and industry associations involved, they give you an industry-wide solution. And that's how you get this going. So you work with the Taxi and Transportation Association, and you say, let's come up with solutions. And that then makes the sales cycle much easier, because then you start having this, whether it's informal or formal certification happening.
Okay, we have another comment here from Kazi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You say that yes, defining green is difficult. If there were standard baseline data for every sector, at least the prominent sectors like infrastructure, building, transportation, energy, and textiles, then combing through the portfolio would be easier.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? Unfortunately, as I said, there are some regional bodies. If you look at the U.S., you've got the EPA. In Europe, you've got bodies. Southeast Asia now, India is starting to have different bodies that are concerned about climate change, and they start creating those baseline data and start saying that, okay, look, we must go from this much in emissions to this much. So I would say lending difficult. This is why financial institutions have this feeling of stress that, this is not just new, it's complicated. And that's why you need to take that complexity out by trying to develop good products, by having an ecosystem where experts can say, yes, we can certify that this is 25% less energy, and also trying to develop pre-approved products. And so pre-approved products is not just at the industry level, but there are individual financial institutions who started to do that. So again, in Latin America, you have groups of banks who've gotten together and said, okay, we will make a list of air conditioners that are pre-approved. All these 7 brands are pre-approved. They all reduce, emissions by 25%. And so you can use our financing for any of them. And then that makes it really easy at the retail level for the loan officer to sell that loan because they don't have to worry about the technology. It's on that list. And so one of the tools we've given you is a little primer on how to get started with that. But of course, if your industry has it, it's even better. But those kinds of things are developing. They're just developing now. Any other questions? I hope that the webinar was useful for you. I hope you will download the user guide and have a look at what the items are. And you can go to our partner community. If you've joined our partner community, you can actually download some of these guides and look at them. And if you want to use some of the training, just contact our GCPF Technical Assistance Department. They own the toolkit and they can help you, they can talk you through which ones are most useful to you once you're clear about what you're trying to solve. But hopefully you will see that there's something in here for all levels of the organization. And that way we're trying to take the complexity out of green lending for you. Thank you very much, everyone.